Today, we're diving into something pretty wild: how the US dollar is quietly being rebuilt for the next big global conflict. And trust me, this isn't just about finance, it's about power, and it could fundamentally change how money works for all of us. So let's set the scene. Picture this: it's 2026. Tensions between the US and Iran have hit a boiling point. Suddenly, Iran seizes the Strait of Hormuz. You know, the narrow channel where about a fifth of the entire world's oil supply flows through? They've just weaponized one of the most critical choke points in the global economy. And then comes the demand. They start charging a toll, $2 million for a single supertanker to pass through. But here's the thing: it's not really about the money. This is a massive strategic power play. The real shocker isn't the price tag, it's how they're demanding to be paid. Iran's terms are crystal clear. You can pay in Chinese yuan, or you can pay in something called a stablecoin. The one currency they absolutely will not accept: the US dollar. Now, on the surface, this looks like a full frontal assault on the dollar's global dominance. But the reality, well, it's way more complicated and honestly a lot more interesting. This move by Iran actually creates this incredible paradox. See, their attempt to dodge the dollar by using stablecoins might just be the very thing that makes the dollar even stronger. Let me explain what I mean. Here's the giant catch. Almost all stablecoins out there, we're talking 99% of them, are pegged one-to-one with the US dollar. So when Iran takes a payment in a stablecoin, they're basically still taking a dollar. It's just a new digital version of it. It's this act of defiance that, ironically, ends up reinforcing the very system they're trying to escape. And that's the key takeaway here. Iran's real target isn't the dollar's value, it's the dollar's plumbing. They're trying to find a way around the SWIFT payment network, which is the global messaging system for banks that the US effectively controls. This whole thing is about finding new financial rails. And that realization, well, that's what sparked America's countermove. Which brings us to the United States' strategic response, a new piece of legislation called the Genius Act. You can think of this as America's new blueprint for this emerging financial battlefield. So the Genius Act, which in our scenario gets passed in 2025, completely rewires the American financial system. It gives trusted FDIC-insured banks, your JP Morgans, your Bank of Americas, the green light to issue their own stablecoins, all backed by US government debt. What this does is create a whole new army of regulated digital dollars. Now, you have to understand, not all stablecoins are built the same. You've got the really risky algorithmic ones. Remember the whole Terra/Luna disaster that just blew up? Then you have crypto-backed ones. But the Genius Act focuses squarely on what are called fiat-collateralized stablecoins. These are backed one-to-one by real-world assets like US Treasury bills. That makes them way more stable and, for the government, way more controllable. And this is really the heart of the whole strategy. The US government isn't creating its own central bank digital currency. Nope. Instead, it's outsourcing the job of creating new digital dollars to the private sector. This is a huge, huge shift. It gives the biggest banks in the country a direct stake in the future of money itself. But as crazy and futuristic as this all sounds, it's not a new idea. Not at all. In fact, to really get your head around the Genius Act, we need to take a trip back in time, to London in the year 1694. The center of the financial world has always moved around, right? It went from Amsterdam to London, then to New York, and every time the world's payment network shifted, it was because of a major shift in global power. What we're witnessing right now is the next evolution. It's not moving to a new city, it's moving to a new digital network. And this is where it feels like we've seen this movie before. Back in 1694, the British crown was totally broke from fighting wars, so they cut a deal. A group of private merchants would lend the government money, and in return, they got the right to issue banknotes backed by that government debt. This deal created the Bank of England and cemented the pound's dominance for centuries. The Genius Act, it's the exact same playbook, just updated for the digital age. The US government lets private banks issue digital dollars backed by government debt. It's the same logic: outsource money creation to hold on to national power. Okay, but this whole grand strategy has a massive Achilles heel. The entire system is built on something called a peg, that simple promise that one digital dollar will always, always be worth one real dollar. The problem is, financial history is just littered with the wreckage of broken pegs. And this quote right here, it just nails the problem. A fixed exchange rate is like a dam. It can hold back a lot of pressure for a while, but if a big enough attack comes along, that dam is gonna break.
And this isn't some niche crypto problem, it's a fundamental law of economics. We saw it happen to the British pound in 1992, and we saw the exact same mechanism play out in crypto 30 years later.
The collapse of Terra Luna is the perfect, terrifying modern example. Now, it was an algorithmic stablecoin, so it was a bit different, but the way it failed is universal. A few big players started selling, which knocked the price just slightly off its $1 peg. The automated defense system kicked into overdrive, printing a flood of its sister token, which caused that to collapse. Panic spread like wildfire, and the whole system went into a death spiral. Just poof, $45 billion vanished. And this is the part that people really need to understand. The Terra collapse wasn't just about one guy committing fraud, though that's part of the story. It was a structural failure. The system was designed from the ground up with the exact same economic flaws that have brought down national currencies for decades. The tech was shiny and new, but the mistake was ancient. So what does this all mean for the future of the dollar? When you connect the dots, from Iran's power play to America's Genius Act to the inherent risks of these currency pegs, you can start to see the outlines of a brand new battlefield. To figure out where we are in this grand cycle, analysts often use this 5-stage framework to measure the health of a world power. It starts with things like rising debt, then moves to weakening trust in the currency, and ends with the rise of a credible rival. So if we apply this to the US, you can see we're pretty deep into stages 1 and 2. We have astronomical debt, and the dollar's share of global reserves has been slowly chipping away. That hypothetical Hormuz incident, that's the start of stage 4, cracks in the payment network. But that critical last stage, stage 5, the rise of a true rival power, we're not there yet. There's just no other country that has the whole package: the military might, the economic size, and the financial plumbing to replace the US. The whole point of the Genius Act is to reinforce that position and basically try to postpone that final stage indefinitely. But this new strategy is definitely not a silver bullet. You have truly decentralized assets like Bitcoin that exist completely outside the state-controlled system, which makes them really hard to sanction or control. And here's a weird thought. What if the US starts holding Bitcoin as a reserve asset itself? That would legitimize a currency that's basically the philosophical opposite of the dollar. Not to mention handing over the keys to money creation to private banks. Well, that opens up a whole new can of worms. So, that leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? Is this whole stablecoin strategy a brilliant 4D chess move to lock in another century of American financial power? Or is it more like a desperate patch on a system that's already showing its age? One thing seems pretty certain, though. The next war for global dominance might not be fought with aircraft carriers and tanks, but with lines of code.